All right, this is obviously Bernie Sanders giving a speech last night in New York City. And Hillary Clinton better get used to seeing this, because anytime Bernie appears, he gets a ton of people coming out to support him. And what made this, in my mind, really good is the fact that they had a permit for him to give the speech up in the Bronx. And there's a tremendous number of minorities in the Bronx, and he had all of those people, okay, people of color, that came out to hear his speech. Now, Bernie obviously has had a problem in pulling in African American support, and that's no secret, but it looks like he may get over the hump. Now, Bernie's originally from, born and raised in New York, in Brooklyn, as a matter of fact. So he is a homegrown favorite son. And Clinton, though, you know, she lives in New York, she's not originally from New York. So we're going to see what's going to happen here. But in this particular, at this particular rally, the New York Police Department, excuse me, would not allow all of the people that wanted to get in to the park. Okay, and this is a big park. They would not allow all the people that wanted to get into the park because they cited crowd control issues, which is a bunch of bullshit. So anyway, I'm going to play this clip from Morning Joe and some of their commentary, and then I'll come in at the end.
And if that speech is so great, I think the American people have the right to hear it.
Whoa. Mika, what a massive crowd in New York City last night. Something that Hillary Clinton's going to have to get used to seeing over the next 2 weeks as we move towards the New York primary.
And he's going there in a big way on the issue of those speeches. Bernie Sanders addressed an audience of between 18 and 19,000 people. Who gets that crowd?
The Knicks used to get it years
Would
ago.
Donald Trump get that crowd?
That was Phil Madison's
Trump.
I don't know.
Trump can get that crowd.
He can get a crowd.
He's got
18 or 19,000?
Yes, he's got
We'll have to ask Donald. Lines stretch around
You're
the
not
park
asking.
where the event took place hours before Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, 74 years old, talks like Larry David. I'm just saying, okay?
Democratic Socialist.
Democratic Socialist.
See, and if any of you guys know that park, that's Prospect Park. And that line stretched not a mile, it stretched miles encircling that park. So yeah, he got a hell of a great crowd yesterday.
Look at that, everybody, and tell me what's going on. I understand Hillary Clinton has a lock on this, but what is going on here? Before he addressed the main audience, he spoke briefly to
You're
an
being
overflow
sarcastic
crowd.
when you say you understand she has a lock on this.
Well, no, everyone tells me that she does, and the numbers seem to say she'll say it. She's got a lock on it.
It's not. It's not a
She
lock.
ain't got no lock on this.
Look at those crowds.
Can we talk about the smart key?
I want to show you this. Look at these crowds. It looks like a part of Woodstock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It smelled like Woodstock too.
Yeah.
Did it smell like I was there.
Wait, Katie,
Excuse
you were
me.
there? Did it smell like Woodstock?
Excuse me, I was at Woodstock. The only person on this set who was at Woodstock. Let's just make this
why
clear.
don't-
It smelled like I imagined.
Why don't you guys better smell?
Much better.
Better said.
Really?
Young Casey. Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
So are they voters? Are they young people
A lot
that
of them
might show
are.
up?
This was one of the most diverse crowds I've ever seen Bernie Sanders have. It was still on the younger side, but there were also
Minorities?
There were Latinos, a lot of people
New York.
speaking Spanish. It's the South Bronx.
New York, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and I mean, and they were obviously thrilled to see him. People waited 4 hours. They couldn't figure out. The Sanders campaign was very frustrated. The cops wouldn't let the thousands of people they said they were going to let into the main park. So you had this baseball field full of people.
I've been out of pocket in the south of France, aka Baltimore, and I've been hearing about the Clinton campaign, talking about Sanders' tone, and kind of really, you can tell that they're feeling defensive, and now I see why. Now I see why. Because I don't know what he's attacking her on except the issues. Is there some personal story that he's going after? Is he tweeting something?
There's not, and they were actually called out by that when they got on the air and started talking about his tone. It's a joke. His tone does not even approach the tone in the Republican Party. In fact, usually the complaints are about issues. I'm sure they won't like the, quote, tone, Mike Barnacle, of Bernie Sanders talking about Wall Street speeches and making that much money. It must have been a very good speech. But we talked about this yesterday. Many people believe in both sides that she's going to get beaten in Wisconsin, possibly handily, and then she's going to have to endure a couple of weeks of that bad press and a really bad New York media.
And big rallies.
And huge rallies across New York.
But she'll win.
Well, it's not, you'd have to back me up on this. I don't think it's the tone of Bernie Sanders' campaign and his rhetoric that is aggravating the Clinton people, and especially former Secretary Clinton. It's the fact that her leads have collapsed in state after state after state. This is her home state. This is where she was elected to the United States Senate. She began her presidential campaign with a nearly 50-point lead over Bernie Sanders. It is now down to about 12 and perhaps shrinking internally. We don't know. But so it's her frustration, the campaign's frustration, in dealing with a 74-year-old Democratic socialist from Burlington, Vermont, that they can't put away.
Well, and in some ways it's clear that she's lucky that there are all of those ticks against Bernie Sanders, that he can't make the argument that she's trying to make, hey, I'm a historic candidate, I'm potentially the first woman president. I mean, this is somebody who we treated as fringe in the beginning, right? And he's come, quite far. I think it tells you so much about the mood in the country.
It's real.
I've gone to so many of these rallies. To a certain extent, you get inured to these thousands of people showing up day after day after day. You walk into 3 rallies a day and it feels the same. It's thousands of people everywhere. But somehow, people who don't do that miss that is where all of the energy is.
Which, by the way, there's just no way Hillary Clinton can draw those type of crowds. She never draws those type of crowds. She never comes even close.
And it may not
Sanders
matter.
crowds are also interesting, and again, I refer to you. You've seen more of them than I have. But there's almost a joyousness.
There is.
In the
People
crowd.
are excited.
And the response to some of the issues.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Trump gets response, to funny things and this and that. People go crazy when he talks about Wall Street or the speeches or this and that. There is like a real mood and a connection, an intellectual connection with what he's saying. So you wouldn't know because we haven't introduced everyone because I haven't had a chance.
Let's bring in
because of me.
John Heilman really quick.
John Heilman.
And John, I want you to comment, then we'll introduce everybody who's already talked for 6 minutes. John, it seems to me,
good-looking people
at the very least, the one thing that these crowds and Bernie Sanders' continued success, even as all the smart guys and all the smart women say, oh, he'll never win. The one thing that certainly we can say without a doubt is that if, for some reason, James Comey's investigation, which he is taking very specific interest in, does not turn out well for Hillary Clinton, you will not be hearing calls for Al Gore or John Kerry or Joe Biden to be out there. This is... at least half of it. This is Bernie Sanders' party right now, more than it's any of theirs. And this guy has proven he's got the stuff.
100% right. Look, I mean, he's been a phenomenon, obviously, for the past year. And the fact that he continues to be a phenomenon in the face of, as you put it, Joe, so many of the smart guys, including a lot of people, including me, who've said that the delegate math is so daunting that he's unlikely to be the Democratic nominee. Thousands of people continue to show up. Not just in spite of that, but in some sense because of it. It's like they are furious with everyone saying this race is over, and it's like causing a lot of his supporters to rally around him in an even more passionate way than they did before. But here's the reality. She has gotten a couple million more votes than he has gotten, despite the fact that her crowds are always smaller. And that is the bottom line. But I will say, and this is something the Clinton campaign will admit privately, is that if Bernie Sanders gets to spend time in a state, on the ground, sustained periods of time, on the air with advertising, on the ground with rallies, he is consistently proving that he is moving votes. And that she has benefited to a large extent from a lot of these multi-state primaries where he doesn't have enough time to go there and spend time there. Here in Wisconsin, he's had time. He's moving votes. And her worry is that with 2 weeks between Wisconsin and New York, the same thing will happen there. And if he were to win in New York, the symbolic, even by one vote, the symbolic blow to her candidacy would be huge.
And let's also look right now at a couple other things. Hillary, we've been obsessing over Donald Trump's weakness as a general election candidate because his disapproval ratings are in the 60s. Her disapproval ratings are in the 50s. It is not good for a candidate with high disapproval ratings to get blown out in Wisconsin if that were to happen. Then to come to New York, lose her home state, and have somebody going state by state by state now that these contests are more spread out and doing very well. That doesn't help the approval-disapproval ratings. It also doesn't help the knock against the DNC from the very beginning, which is not a knock, it's the truth. This process is rigged.
I know.
And it's been rigged on the Democratic side.
I crassly said it months ago.
Since they rigged it in Iowa.
Yeah.
And they
shot themselves in the foot.
They continued to rig it. They have super delegates, which rigged the process early on. But those super delegates, they rigged the debates. And despite all of that, Bernie Sanders is doing exceedingly well. And those super delegates can change overnight. They're not likely to change overnight.
I doubt it, yeah.
No, but I'm just saying that let's see what happens with the FBI investigation. Let's see what happens state after state after state after state. Let's see what happens with those disapproval ratings. I'm only saying all this to say for those that say there's no way Bernie Sanders can win, you're just wrong.
Right.
Those are the same people that said Donald Trump couldn't take a run.
But the data for New York shows that she's not going to lose her state. Another poll out of Wisconsin, though, shows Bernie Sanders lead.
All right, so you heard it here first. I think Bernie's going to beat her in New York. All right, I really do. Now, what he needs to do is he's got to get the black people in New York, he's got to get them on board. And I think him holding that rally in the South Bronx, which, just so that the people that aren't aware of it, South Bronx is really heavily populated by Hispanics. And if you could center in on a lot of the faces there, you'll see that a lot of them were Hispanics. There were black people there. As a matter of fact, there were quite a few there. But he needs to get into the black community in New York. If he can just get her numbers knocked down, and he can get his numbers up to like 25, 30, 35%, he will blow her ass out in New York.